hear the PowerPoint, but why don't we start with questions? If people have questions, why don't we start with them, and then we can go from there on.
Okay. Maureen, do you want to start with questions, or should I pull up the PowerPoint?
Pull up the PowerPoint, but start with questions. Okay.
So for those of
if
you,
anybody's got any questions, if you'd put them in either the question and answer, I guess it's only the chat, right? Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. So we will get started with questions for Maureen from COE.
Well, why don't I start running my mouth, and then as you put questions in the chat, we can move to those questions, because I know that you might have some questions. So some of you who participated in the
my apologies, Maureen, I'm redoing
in the policy seminar are familiar with the beginning of this, but let's go to the next slide, and we'll forget the music this time.
Oh, okay.
Just to get done in time. Some of you may know that the Democratic, what I wanted to convey to people is that that we're in a really unprecedented time for most of the people that are attending the North Dakota, South Dakota meeting. That for most of you, the kind of time that we're entering preceded your birth. And you really have to go back to the 60s. So the next slide, Jordana, to understand a similar time in our country's history. As you recall from your history books, the civil rights movement put a tremendous pressure on the whole country to say that there were issues, injustices, situations that could not be solved except by the federal government. That the private sector and the states alone didn't have the capacity to solve these problems. And probably, and certainly, not probably, the biggest indication of that kind of problem that could not be solved, would not be solved by the private sector alone without action by the federal government, was segregation and the limitation of opportunity for individuals from different racial and ethnic groups, particularly Blacks and Native Americans. So let's go to the next slide. And so this is a slide of the casket of John Lewis, who was involved in so many of those demonstrations, was beaten very viciously in the Selma Montgomery March, with his casket going over the Selma Montgomery, the bridge. Next slide, please. So you have to kind of put yourself back in that time where President Johnson said, hey, you know, government can solve this. Government is the major player in providing opportunity. That higher education, white institutions can be opened up. Poor kids can go to college. People can receive upward mobility. That's 1965. Next slide, please. And he said that, and because he had an experience with low-income children, being a teacher in a low-income Mexican-American school, he understood the obstacles, both financial and non-financial, that those students that he had taught faced in achieving upward mobility and equity. But 15 years later, there was reaction, next slide, please, to that belief about government, where Ronald Reagan, when he was sworn in as president, said government isn't the solution, government is the problem. So since 1980, so we're talking for 40 years, our federal government, regardless of who was president, whether it was a Republican president or a Democratic president, whether it was George H.W. Bush or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama, was basically operating under the constraints that Ronald Reagan put forward. That government most often cannot provide big solutions, is not an answer. It is part of the problem. And then we come up with the biggest problem that has been recognized by most people. Next slide, please. COVID. And it was clear that states couldn't solve this problem. The private sector wasn't going to solve this problem. So we kind of get thrown back into the political philosophy of the 1960s that government has to solve big problems that are facing our country. Because if government does not become an active player in solving those problems, then they won't be solved. And so right now we're in a period of time, it may be a long period of time, it may be only till the next election, where that philosophy governs, where people have agreed that that we should be looking to government to solving COVID. We should be looking to government to providing answers to issues as complex as racial injustice, as complex as economic inequality. And so because of that, and because of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, which pushed that, next slide, please, the Democratic platform included a commitment to doubling the maximum Pell Grant award and doubling TRIO programs and funding for TRIO programs. And so COE's charge right now is to make sure that the Congress and the administration deliver on that promise to double the number of students served by TRIO in the next 5 years, because there's 5 years of budgets that this administration will put forward. Next slide, please. And let's go to the next slide. And the next slide. So to get to doubling for the first of those 5 years, it would be a $219 million investment. Now, COE has a policy agenda that is different than our immediate agenda with Congress. Our policy agenda is to double Pell and double TRIO. It's to remove the citizenship requirement in TRIO so that DACA students and Dreamers could be served by refugees, could be served by TRIO programs. It is to focus in any loan forgiveness program to focus on students who are originally from low-income families so that higher education does provide mobility to those students and that the loan costs that they bear don't wipe out their or limit their chances for mobility. And also that individuals working in TRIO programs are able to get public service loan forgiveness. So where would this money, this doubling of TRIO, this first down payment of $219 million go to? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So it would provide enough money in the Upward Bound Math Science, Veterans Upward Bound, and McNair programs to have a reasonable cutoff, to increase the number of significantly increase the number of programs funded. It would also, let's go back to that slide. Lower, put more money into the talent search competition. So you'll realize that because we only got a $7 million, really a non-significant increase last year, that to drop the competition for both talent search and EOC, to have a realistic cutoff, we need to get more money into that competition. And then to even be able to fund down the slate on student support services. So recognize the limitations in time. I want to go to any questions that you might have. And if you would put those in the chat, I would appreciate it. The first question is, what are the chances of Ed dropping the year from the APRs for McNair and Upward Bound as they did for Talent Search? We believe that that's what they're going to do. In terms of Upward Bound, they're also going to have to do something with respect to the question on performance on standardized tests, because for 2 years of those 3 years, many states didn't give standardized tests. So they're going to have to make an adjustment on that. They know that, they just haven't figured out what that's going to be yet. I think there was another question. Would this eliminate the citizenship requirement for financial aid? No, it would not. The requirement for financial aid, the citizenship requirement, is legislative. The citizenship requirement in TRIO is regulatory. So Ed has the capacity to open negotiated rulemaking. It could be done legislatively, but the chances of that we do not think are great. There's a bill that is passed the House that would do that, but we think our best chances are with a regulatory change, not a legislative change. That's a really, really good question. Could you talk a bit about COE plans to help tribal nations, tribal colleges with Upward Bound or other program funding? We want to work really closely with Aspire to identify those in North Dakota and South Dakota are really key on this, to first convince the institutions that they should apply for Upward Bound. I'm going to go off here for a second. We have another request into the department, which is related to the regulatory request on citizenship. Our experience has been that the question in the student support services application that requires a comparison of two groups on a number of factors, retention, graduation, transfer, works to the disadvantage of tribal colleges. So we have raised with the department the possibility of eliminating those questions as well, to level the playing field for tribal colleges in the student support services competition. But in terms of the Upward Bound competition, I think there are issues related to Native students in urban areas that work to the disadvantage of reaching Native students. But in terms of tribal colleges and the tribes themselves applying for Upward Bound, if they can be convinced to apply, and if they can be provided support, I think they have a really, really good chance of getting Upward Bound. And so hopefully North Dakota and South Dakota as state associations will really do a lot to gin up demand, and then both in terms of working individually with institutions, providing webinars, whatever we can do at COE in conjunction with the Tribal College Association, we will do to make sure that those programs have a really good chance of being funded. I don't expect an answer on the disconnection from standardized tests. You have to understand that in the Department of Education right now, the undersecretary has been nominated but not confirmed. He's supposed to be go before the committee in the Senate, the initial step in confirmation this week. So there being, and he might not get voted on until next week. The assistant secretary hasn't even been nominated, although the person who's acting as assistant secretary is, there is an acting assistant secretary. So it's probably going to be at least early summer before the issue of the standardized test comes to resolution within the department. They know it exists. It's just getting the approval line in order. It's not in order yet, the approval line, if that makes any sense. I don't know if Dusty Johnson signed the bill, but I will get back.
Maureen, I actually put he did, and I put also a note that the deadlines for, we can show the slide of where they currently are, but I've also, the deadlines were extended, and I put that in the chat as well.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So does that cover all of the, questions? I think it covers all of the questions, but it is it's 5:30 here. So here's where we are in terms of North Dakota. You can see who's not signed the funding letter. These are the questions they said, and fantastic, top 5 in terms of North Dakota. So we'll make sure that we share these slides with each of you, with your leadership, so that you can share them with everybody else, where we are and everything. So one more chance, I guess, to ask any questions, and then I'll leave you. I'm really sorry I didn't get to spend more time with you. And Krista, thank you for adjusting the schedule so that I could join you. And please stay in touch in terms of Aspire has, as Rachel, I'm sure, can fill you in on, a task force on tribal college and concerns that it really wants to work on this. We really want to work on this. So there's no reason we can't be successful on this if we just coordinate what we're doing. And you get to people early enough. So the pressures on tribal colleges are so great. Again, thank you very much. I really appreciate being able to join you.
There's no other questions for Maureen. We always just thank you for your time, Maureen, and for Jordana to come and share any updates, especially the legislative updates that you guys all shared as well. So thank you so much for joining us for the Co-State Conference.
It was great. Thank you.
If you all want to stay on, we will be waiting for Representative Dusty Johnson to be joining us on the same link. So that is slated to start around 4:45. So you all have a small little break again to maybe run to the restroom or grab something to drink, and then we'll wrap up with Trio Achiever Awards. So We've rallied through. Welcome, Dusty.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll wait just a couple more minutes to get some more people on. We have about 50 members from both North and South Dakota here from different TRIO programs.
Sure. You allow the North Dakotans in. That's kind.
One powerful Dakota, as we like
Yeah.
to think of it, right?
Mega Coda. I love it.
All right, it looks like it's about 4:45, so we will get started. We're excited to have South Dakota Representative Dusty Johnson join us to share legislative updates. Dusty brings his energy and optimistic style to Washington as South Dakota's lone voice in the U.S. House of Representatives. He lives in Mitchell, South Dakota with his wife and 3 sons. And so take it away, Representative Dusty Johnson.
Well, thanks for having me. And I love the trail programs, and I got a number of friends involved with the program. Thomas Madut here in Dakota Wesleyan has come to DC to tell me about all of the great things the program does. And I know going from way back when, I'm a first generation college graduate, and my college roommate was involved with Upward Bound, and really loved the kind of outcomes that that program that he felt like he was having on people's lives. So for a long time, I have admired everything you all do. And then back in March, we had a good group that educated me even further yet during kind of a virtual fly-in time about all the things you guys are doing and the incredible challenges that you and the students you're helping are facing. And so thanks for doing what you're doing. I'm sure a number of you saw that we continue to have a lot of bipartisan support for these trail programs. And not just me, lots of other people signed on to a letter to the appropriators, making sure that we do have robust investment in trail programs. You know, if we care about people fulfilling their dreams, and we all should, if we care about pathways out of poverty, and we all should, if we care about economic mobility, and we all should, it is just hard to make a more meaningful investment in those things than what you guys are doing. And so thank goodness, you know, this is an area that we can get bipartisan agreement in. We will have robust funding for TRIO. Hopefully that funding will go up and go up in a meaningful and material way, because man, we get incredible bang for the buck in what you all are doing. You're changing lives to a far greater degree than at any given day that I am. So thank you for doing what you're doing. It makes my job easier and our country better. You know, it is not a good time for bipartisanship in DC. If the first 24 months I had in Washington were more rewarding than I expected, just a lot more working together that I think you traditionally hear about. I was surprised. Every single week when we're in session, there were bills that were passing out of the House with a couple hundred Democrat and a couple hundred Republican votes. That's the way it should be. A lot of this is about, you know, blocking and tackling and doing the kind of common sense progress our country needs. That's been harder to come by, I'll be honest with you, in the last 3 months. I'm hopeful that we can get back to that. There are a lot of factors to that, and I'm not pointing any fingers. We're just in an era of one-party control of the House and of the Senate and of the White House. And in those instances, kind of regardless of who's in charge, you can imagine that there's less of an appetite and certainly less of a need for them to work in a bipartisan way. But I still think regardless of who's in charge, we find better solutions working together. The Democrats don't have all the answers. The Republicans don't have all the answers. And particularly when it comes to investment in young people, particularly when it comes to investment in an idea that Democrats and Republicans both feel so strongly about, which is economic opportunity for all people, regardless of their socioeconomic status or whether they're a first generation college student or not. This is the stuff we should be working together on. So I think there'll be some meaningful opportunities. Maybe not here in the spring, but I think as we get into the early summer, into the fall, I think you're going to see more and more bipartisan pieces of legislation move from an appropriations perspective and from an education committee perspective. And that's going to be good news for you and the students you support and for all of us who care about that. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, or I don't know, you guys don't want to hear me talk any more than I already have. So I would recognize Andrea. She's our Northeast area director. And she, like everybody on our team, just loves what you guys are doing. So if you've got questions or comments, I'm all ears. And maybe while you're gathering your thoughts, Krista, do you mind if I say one more thing? So we have lots of internship opportunities, and we have tried in the last 2 years to make transformational changes in what those internship opportunities look like. And I'll mention 2 examples of us trying to walk this walk. Internships in DC used to pay $500 a month. That is just fine for people who come from means. It is wholly insufficient for people who don't. And so we have made these, full paying internships. Nobody's going to get rich doing them. They will be economically just on the edge of being able to make it. But I think it is now a meaningful opportunity for people who come from a challenging economic situation to actually have an internship in our DC office. And please spread the word, because even people who a couple years ago would have thought that's not something I can do, it's something you might be able to work now without having parents who can write a big check to help you out. So we want them. Secondly, and of course, you all help students of all different colors and creeds, but we've also set aside an internship in our office for people who have a particular interest in Native American affairs. Through the entirety of the 1960s, my job in the United States Congress representing South Dakota was held by Ben Rifle, a 100% Lakota, and he was the first Lakota to serve our country in Congress. He was just a great American, somebody we should all aspire to be more like. So we've established the Ben Rifle internship in our office. Now, you don't have to be Native to access the internship, but you do need to be somebody who cares about tribal issues and about Native American issues. You are going to know, many of you are going to know students for whom that's going to be right up their alley, either now or in a few years. And we are trying to make sure that our office is, looks like, looks like South Dakota, and that we're giving meaningful opportunities to all different types of people. And we just wanted to call out that internship. Looks like Lacey has a question. I haven't looked at the chat box, so Krista, you may need to take a look, or have somebody else tell me, but I did see that one pop up from Lacey as far as what information do we need. Keep doing what you guys have been doing. I mean, when people come, number one, in person's the best. I understand that imposes additional financial requirements to get out to DC, but it's the best way to tell your story, not just to me, but to our staffers and to the staffers of Thune and Rounds. And so keep sending people out to tell that story. It is so powerful. And I'm a true believer, and I know our delegation is a true believer, but when you give us the stories about specific students or specific data outcomes, we can use that to also go tell the stories to our colleagues. And so you empower us with those incredible stories. And particularly from an appropriator's perspective. I mean, when we get a bunch of signatures on a letter that say, we want you to prioritize this funding for TRIO above this other stuff, that makes a difference. And particularly when we followed up with conversations with these appropriators on the floor, you know, hey, did you get that letter? I know you get a lot of letters, but I just want to call out specifically why these things matter. So keep sending the data. You guys are such great storytellers. And when Jenny and Ashley and Megan and Peggy gave me more data in March, that just made me better at my job. So.
Dusty, can you talk a little bit about the, I think it's called the Jobs Act, and maybe where your stance is on that?
Mm-hmm. So I don't really do acronyms or bill numbers very well. So give me another couple of words about what this is.
Well, I don't know a ton about it either. It was a question that was brought up, and it talks a little bit about more money going to different areas, different populations of students, I guess, regarding Pell. I don't know.
Oh, sure.
I just was curious what your stance is on that.
Well, I'm a big believer in restoring some of the purchasing power of the Pell Grants. They've been untouched for quite a number of years. And I am vehemently opposed to forgiving student debt because, you know, people who have a 4-year or a 2-year degree or even a 6-week certification, they have so much higher earning potential than most of America. So I don't love the idea of taking people who have more earning potential and kind of making this debt go away. I also think it sends a really bad message about what it means to borrow money. But I'm a big believer, and it's also very, very expensive, by the way. Forgiving $50,000 of student loan debt is really expensive. And frankly, it helps a lot of people who made decisions to go to very expensive programs, which many of your students are in a position where they're trying to make good decisions about going to educational institutions that can better meet their economic capacity. But I'm a big believer in raising up the Pell Grant. Because if what we're trying to do with forgiving student loans is to level the economic playing field, the Pell Grant does that so much better. And it does that in a more powerful and abiding way. You know, let's make college more affordable, not by saying the price tag doesn't matter because the government will pay it all. Let's make college more affordable by saying the price tag does matter. And so we want to create for students at the most economically challenged level more of an opportunity to buy into that educational opportunity. Removing those barriers, I'm a big believer. If that's what the Jobs Act does, I'm for it. If it puts more money into workforce development, if it puts more money into counseling programs, if it puts more money into TRIO, if that's the kind of thing that bill does, those are the components I like. If it does a bunch of other stuff, you know, maybe it gets to a point where I can't support it. And I may look, if we get somebody else making a comment here, I'll maybe multitask and figure out exactly which one the Jobs Act is.
We did have another comment, Dusty, from Dawn. She said, your support of TRIO is clear. Thank you. What challenges do you anticipate in DC in increasing the TRIO budget in a meaningful way?
Well, we're going broke. I mean, I don't want to be a downer, but you know, the reality is we are spending a lot more money than we have. And I don't think it matters where you are on the political spectrum. Maybe you want a government that does a lot more to help people. Maybe you want a government that's a lot more limited and is focused only on doing a few things well. Regardless of where you are, right to left, it seems like we should get to an agreement that the inflows and the outflows should roughly balance. And that's not where we're at right now. And there is plenty of blame to go around. So I'm not really interested in apportioning blame at this point. I would just tell you, I mean, $1 trillion is a million millions. And forget COVID money, which has been massive. Forget the infrastructure package we're talking about, which is huge. I'm just talking year in and year out. Americans want $5 trillion worth of stuff from their government, but they only want to pay $4 trillion for it. And that will bankrupt our country. Now, again, you can solve the problem by saying we're going to tax people more, and that gives you a 5 and 5. That's balanced. You can cut the 5 down to 4 and 4, and then that balances. You can split it in the middle. I mean, I do think at some point we want to get to something closer to balance, because that's the biggest threat to programs like TRIO, is that when we get to a point, as will happen if we don't make changes, when we get to a point like the United States does what happened to Detroit, or what happened to Greece, or what happens to other governments, because governments do go bankrupt. When that happens, you see a period of austerity, which is a fancy word for cutting the holy living heck out of programs. And if we get to a point where we have to give a 30% haircut to programs across the board because the Chinese won't loan us any more money because we defaulted on the loan, there's just no way that TRIO will be able to be held harmless for those 30% gut punches. If we can keep the financial trend on the tracks, I think TRIO is very well situated to be an environment where we continue to invest. But these deficits are really bad news for programs that help people.
Megan, it looks like you have your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Right, thank you. Thanks for being here with us, Representative Johnson, and for your time in DC. I know it's not always enjoyable there, but thank you for having your family out there and everything. We had a great meeting with Andrea out there for the COE days. So I was wondering, often COE encourages us to have you meet with our students, and I'm wondering, I run the Upward Bound program here at USD, and I know that you're frequently here on campus and do presentations. What sort of events would be useful for you or your staff to be a part of, so you could hear some of these stories, meet some of our students? What would be a good, do you want to come to a class? Do you want to come to a summer program? Like, what would you like to see that could help you share our story with other representatives and maybe even our other state delegates?
Oh, don't ask me, because I am so much more ignorant than you are. And so you tell me. I mean, I'm really open to learning. I'm very vulnerable to the idea that I only know a fraction of what I need to know about your world, Megan. And so you identify the 2 or 3 best opportunities, work with Andrea, work with Chelsea, our in-state scheduler, and let's get me down there. Because I really think it matters. I think that's experiential learning is the best kind of learning. It's the learning that sticks with you the longest, of course. And so you tell me, and I'm willing to take your word for it.
Awesome.
Do we have any other questions for Dusty Johnson?
Well, you guys are great. Thanks for giving people the tools they need to build a better society. If I thought about it for very long, I could probably get a little misty-eyed about what you guys invest. Just really, really pouring yourselves into this work. You are changing the world one, potential leader at a time. And I love you for it. So thanks for doing what you're doing. When we screw up, let Andrea and I know. We do it all the time. Oh, well, we're trying to get better.
Well,
Thank you for believing us and believing in TRIO.
Sounds good. Take care, everybody.
Thank you so much for your time and commitment. All right. With that, we are going to transition to our final thing. Thanks for sticking with us all day. This has been a long Monday. And so we are going to do our TRIO Achiever Awards and end on a positive note. And I feel like our last couple of sessions have at least kind of ended on a high note with the TRIO appropriation. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right, so you can all see that. And so we are here for a big reason. Obviously, the thing that we like to do when we all meet in person is talk about the students and the TRIO achievers that have overcome some obstacles to reach success post program participation. And so we like to honor both the North Dakota and South Dakota Trio Achiever. This award is given to a current or past Trio project participant who exemplifies the Trio mission, demonstrates a strong character, engaged in the local community, and has overcome obstacles to become successful in his or her field or program. We'll first start with our North Dakota Trio Achievers. So I'll have Joan come up and talk first.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to announce the North Dakota Trio Achiever and share his story with you. Adam Osowski participated in the University of North Dakota Upward Bound program and Student Support Services. As a participant in the Upward Bound program, Adam assumed a leadership role because of his ability to interact with all students and staff. He was well respected for his easygoing nature as well as his academic abilities. Other students saw him as a problem solver, both in and out of the classroom. The same can be said about his time in student support services. He utilized tutoring, academic advising, and financial aid assistance. He became a tutor for SSS and was a mentor for new students. Currently, Adam is a registered nurse working at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and is a member of several leadership committees on his unit. He is enrolled in an MSN MBA dual degree program from the University of Mary in Bismarck. Adam is an extraordinary young man who exhibits strong personal and ethical values, which were instilled in him by his parents and his family. And with that, I think we have a recorded statement from Adam.
Hi everyone, my name is Adam Osowski, and I'd just like to start by thanking everyone for listening to my story, and also reiterate how thankful and humbled I am by being selected for the Trio Aspire Award. Getting into my story, I grew up on a small family farm in rural North Dakota. My parents had not pursued any education beyond the level of high school. That said, as far back as I can remember, my career and educational aspirations always pointed towards college and higher learning. Unfortunately, I lacked a lot of the common family-based resources that could guide me through the application process for both scholarships and college itself. Fortunately for me, Upward Bound and Trio were able to step in and fill these gaps in my resources. So I joined Upward Bound in high school and was able to learn a variety of crucial skills, such as how to successfully apply for college, how to apply for scholarships, as well as gaining a number of other benefits, including college tours to a variety of campuses that I otherwise would not have toured, scholarship information that was given out by the Upward Bound staff that I otherwise wouldn't have known about, as well as one-on-one coaching to answer any questions as far as what colleges to apply for, how to fill out the FAFSA successfully, as well as common deadlines for applications. This support fortunately continued throughout my time in college via student support services. They were able to connect me with a variety of tutors to excel in my science classes, as well as helping me through the new and challenging process of class registration and financial aid applications. I am confident that without this support, I would have never been able to successfully achieve my bachelor's degrees in general studies, as well as nursing from the University of North Dakota. Therefore, I am proud that I have had multiple opportunities to give back to Trio services. This has come in the form of my coming back to student support services as a tutor during the last 2 years of my undergraduate career. I also was able to work as a resident tutor assistant for the Upward Bound program for 2 summers. Finally, I was fortunate enough to be successfully selected to represent and extol the many virtues of the various TRIO programs to the nation's leaders in Washington, D.C. Moving back into my own career, after graduation, I worked as a registered nurse on a cardiac step-down unit at Essentia Health in Fargo, North Dakota. Following this, I have worked as a registered nurse on a vascular surgery step-down unit at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, where I am also a certified nurse teacher and a unit council coordinating member, responsible for teaching nursing students and informing unit policies, respectively, in each of those roles. Most recently, I have enrolled in a dual degree Master's of Nursing and Master's of Business Administration program from the University of Mary in Bismarck, North Dakota, in order to further my nursing career into a more leadership and management focused role. While I've come so very far throughout my education as well as my career journey, I know that I will always remember and remain thankful for the first helping hand I received from Upward Bound and TRIO services, both in high school and throughout college. Thank you.
Oh, that was so nice. I wish we had some sort of celebratory thing
Oh,
to bring. Do you have something?
Hold
Dawn?
on. So we proudly present this plaque to Adam. We will mail it to him, acknowledging his being our North Dakota 2021 TRIO Achiever. There you go, Adam.
Yay! Now we'll move on to our South Dakota Achiever. This Achiever was nominated by a past TRIO professional, Hillary Robinson, who was the former assistant director of Upward Bound at Northern State University. She couldn't be here and did not record something, so unfortunately you all have to listen to me yet again, but I will read her nomination letter. Cora Carroll exemplifies a TRIO Achiever. As a part of Northern State University Upward Bound program throughout all 4 years of high school, Cora was an active and focused participant. Cora was a diligent high school student that was always a leader within the group of Upward Bound students. As the oldest in her single parent family, Cora took on the responsibility willingly and without hesitation in many aspects of her life. She always would strive to do her best and give it her all. Cora is currently in her final semester at Black Hills State University. She will graduate in May of 2021 with her Bachelor of Fine Arts in Photography with a minor in studio art. While attending Black Hills State University full-time, she's also established and maintained 2 of her own businesses, Cora Carroll Photography and Mountain Maiden Company, which focuses on metalsmithing and beadwork. Cora expressed a deep interest in photography while in Upward Bound. Her Upward Bound Bridge internship was with a local photographer in Aberdeen, South Dakota. She excelled within her internship and was extremely driven to draw on the opportunity of working with an established photographer. Cora's passion and experience is shown throughout her artistic ability and beautiful photography. Cora focuses on fine art portrait photography and photographs between 15 and 20 weddings per year. Throughout college, she's taken advantage of many opportunities for personal and educational growth. One example is her involvement with the Semester at Sea. Cora earned a scholarship through Colorado State, the current academic sponsor of the Semester at Sea program. In this time, she spent 4 months within the program, which allowed her to visit over 12 countries and gain priceless experiences, knowledge, and a unique education. Cora feels strongly that finding her passion and then putting everything you have into it will generate success. She embodies this type of success. Upward Bound was able to open the doors for Cora to understand the importance and processes of post-secondary education. She's extremely proud to become a first-generation college graduate in just a few short months at the time this was written, so next month. She continues her involvement within her hometown community by making her own personal responsibility to keep the arts alive. Her small town high school did a type of art education, and is important to Cora to change that within her community. Cora has continued to knock down barriers and be active in creating her path to success. She continues to be determined, hardworking, and passionate in all things that she does. I am so proud of Cora's achievements and grateful to have worked with her as such a smart and strong young woman, as Hillary wrote. This is Cora Carroll. Unfortunately, she couldn't be with us today, but she did send me a statement. She said, "Let me start by saying thank you to Hillary Robinson for nominating me for South Dakota Trio Achiever Award, as well as the thanks to everyone who's contributed in my success of the last 8 years of being a part of Trio. It truly touched my heart to have been nominated and selected for this honor. Before joining the NSU Upward Bound program, I never thought college was accessible for me. I came from a single parent household, so post-high school education was never really a forethought. However, after 5 years at NSU Trio program and then another 4 years at Black Hills State, I don't think I could truly express my gratitude for all that Trio has done for me. If it wasn't for Upward Bound and NSU, I would have never thought college was obtainable. I would have never been able to tour schools throughout the region to get a feel for what I like, what I certainly would not be where I am in terms of success in my photography business. It is with this closing statement that I hope every student in the Upward Bound program at NSU, as well as students in Trio programs throughout South Dakota, find the same success that I have." She was mailed her certificate, so unfortunately I don't get to show that, Joan, but it was a nice plaque, just like you all sent Adam as well. So I'm very excited for her to receive that award and the impact that Trio has had on her in not one, but 2 programs. Yay. With that, we are almost done, folks. So this is just a reminder that we did not have our state meetings here today, and that the North Dakota State meeting for Aspire is Tuesday, April 12th at 10 to 11:30 a.m. Our South Dakota State meeting is going to be a little bit later, Tuesday, May 11th from 10 to 11:30 a.m. as well. And so I just want to close by thanking everyone for attending, thanking the presenters today for their commitment to our success in our programs and the development that we have through Aspire. Just a quick note that all of the sessions today were recorded and will be uploaded through the link that Dennis sent you for your registration. So I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody for attending and kind of powering through this North Dakota, South Dakota virtual conference on a Monday, no less. So as a reminder, we do have our regional coming up in October, and hopefully that will be the last time that we gather apart. And as we look forward to Wyoming in 2022. So with that, thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evenings.
Thank you.